we're seeing a collapse in the West. People are rebelling against it. Look, in the United States, what did Trump say in the campaign? He said, we're spending trillions of dollars. We've added $7 trillion to our debt to fight a war that we created. That was none of our business. It's led to thousands of deaths of young Americans. It's led to hundreds of thousands of lives of Americans ruined. We've killed millions of people in these countries. We've turned people in those countries against the West.
But Europe did the same. Europe did the same. Among America, you have the Europeans that were under the influence of United States of America. So we are under the same debt.
Exactly. And for what? What did we gain from it? Did we improve the conditions in any of those countries? You know, people who talk about Assad as a brutal dictator and killing all these people, causing all these refugees. You know, before the civil war started in Syria, no one was leaving Syria. Syria was calm. Same thing with Baghdad. You know, these are tough places to rule. But in Baghdad, you had women in positions of influence. You had Christians in the government. Tariq Aziz was the vice president.
Libya was the highest economy of Africa before we completely ruined it. You're right.
And you look at what Gaddafi was doing in Libya with water projects and free education.
Absolutely.
And what did we do to bring so-called Western democracy? We destroyed all of that. So the hypocrisy is unbelievable. But I think what's useful is to go back and look at who's doing it and why. And it's not just about money for the military. It's about global governance. It's about the idea of a top-down banker's dictatorship in which no country has the right to get out of line. And beyond that, the push to ensure that there's a reduction of world population, which is being pushed by the same bankers, people like Mark Carney of the Bank of England, who's now saying that banks won't loan any money to any company that's going to produce energy unless it's solar and wind. They're destroying the global economy. You know, the Africans, what do the Africans want? They want electricity. They know they're not going to get electricity to modernize from wind and solar. So we're seeing policies that are being implemented that go back to the period at the end of World War II that basically started with the idea that an Anglo-American governance has to control things. Now, as I was saying earlier, this is something Franklin Roosevelt was fighting against. And the initial idea of the Bretton Woods system of Roosevelt was that with fixed exchange rates based on a relationship to gold, you would not allow for currency speculation. And once Nixon got rid of the Bretton Woods system in 1971, you opened the door for the Soroses and others. And as a result, we've seen deregulation, privatization, the incredible inequality of wealth. And that's what's defended by these war hawks. They're defending a system that's anti-human.
I understand your point of view, but I have to make a statement that Roosevelt, except the fact that you said he has some difference with Churchill, he was also pushing for a war that wasn't necessary for the world. He was behind the people that were pushing for the war, the Second World War, and made a lot of publicity for it, while a lot of people were against the war. So I don't
know when you're talking about. Look, Roosevelt, I think World War II was a necessary fight once it happened. The people who were the criminals in World War II are people like the Bush networks and the Harriman networks who funded the Nazis, working together with Montague Norman, the head of the Bank of England. The British wanted Hitler in power because they wanted Germany fighting Russia. Yeah, and they wanted to make sure that France and Russia never allied with Germany. That's why World War I happened.
Yeah, but you also have financial interests that were pushing behind Churchill and Roosevelt to have this war because there was interest. And the problem with Roosevelt, he wasn't clear concerning the fact that he pushed for this war. Well, it wasn't.
Well, I think you have to. I can send you some material on that. Let me tell you something interesting. In 1942, a bank called the Union Bank Corporation of New York was seized by the Attorney General under the Trading with the Enemy Act. The two leading members of this bank were Roland Harriman, the brother of Averill Harriman, one of the leaders of the Democratic Party, and Prescott Bush, the father of George H.W. Bush. This bank was providing millions of dollars to the Nazi war machine, even after the United States was at war with Germany. So there were Americans who played a role in putting the Nazis in power, and they wanted them in power. But Roosevelt was not one of them. And I think Roosevelt was right to bring the United States into the war for the same reason de Gaulle was right for trying to rally the French people against the Vichy regime.
Okay, so you're sure about this? About Roosevelt? Yeah. Your version, you're sure about this?
No, yeah, I'm sure about it. I mean, Roosevelt's economic policies came from Alexander Hamilton, who was the founding father, who was opposed to the idea of private central banks and instead wanted government banks so there would be credit available for investment in physical production. So this is a longer discussion.
Okay, no. But the interest of the interview is to have the point of view of specialists on those topics.